Good afternoon and welcome to a Choice live stream. I'm Jonathan Brown. It's nice to have your company with us today. Of course, COVID-19 is a situation that's affecting people all across the community, and Choice is Australia's non-profit consumer advocate. We are here to help you, and I just want to say a big thank you to our members, campaign supporters, and everyone in the community who supports our work. You're helping us so much at this time, and thank you for all of your contributions. You can read all about COVID-19 and your consumer rights at choice.com.au, and for today we'll be talking about superannuation with the team from Super Consumers Australia. You can get in touch with us during this live stream. On Facebook, you can leave a comment below for us. You can also tag us on Twitter at Choice Australia, and also the Choice Community Forums at choice.community. We've been getting fantastic tips from people all across Australia helping us with issues from dodgy financial products to price gouging that you're seeing in the community. And so our Choice Community Forums are a great source of information, a great way to get help from our community as well. As today we are talking about superannuation, this live stream is general in nature and should not be treated as financial advice. Please seek help for your personal circumstances. We can highly recommend the non-profit financial counselling service, the National Debt Helpline, on 1800 007 007 or ndh.org.au. Now, Super Consumers Australia is an organisation we're partnering with at Choice, and they join us this afternoon to help us just pick through all of these issues with superannuation and COVID-19. We are joined by Xavier O'Halloran. Xavier, thank you for joining us. Oh, we'll get your audio going. So, Xavier, if we can say hello one more time.
Hey JB, good to be with you.
We are also joined by Daniel and Matthias from the Super Consumers team. Daniel, can you give us a quick hi? Say hello.
Great to be here.
Thank you very much. And Matthias from the Super Consumers team as well. Give us a wave.
Hey, how you going?
All right. So we're going to find out all about superannuation and COVID-19. Obviously, the government has put out this scheme to help some people in the community access their super early. We might start with you, Xavier. Can you give us the details on the scheme and what it entails?
Yeah, sure. So this is one of the big schemes that the government announced as part of the support package. Basically, how it works, if you're one of the people who's been particularly financially impacted by COVID-19, so this is people that have lost their job or had a significant decrease in their income, they're entitled to withdraw their superannuation early. So what they can do is withdraw up to $10,000 this financial year and another $10,000 next financial year. So that's a total of $20,000 if you fall into one of those eligible groups. I guess the important takeaway though is, should you be doing it? We really see this as a bit of a last resort for most people. You really need to go through the checklist of what other options are available for you as well. The government's made it available a number of other support payments, so that you may have heard about things like JobKeeper payments, job seeker payments, some one-off supports as well. And then different utility providers and banks are coming to the party as well, and offering things like loan repayment deferrals for up to 6 months, or some help on delaying different bills that may be coming up at the moment. So really encourage people to get in contact with their utility, telco, energy, banks, anyone who would normally be billing them, and talk about what options they might have available to them if they're in some kind of financial strife at the moment. The other thing that people might want to weigh up there as well is, should you be cutting back on some things at the moment? We know we all have some discretionary expenditure. A lot of people do, not everyone, but if you do have things that you can cut back on, I'd be looking at making those cutbacks as well.
So when it comes to superannuation, Super Consumers Australia, you're obviously oracles and a whole wealth of things, but people don't think about their superannuation that often. And that's one of the issues that we've been working on with Choice and Super Consumers. Can you just give us the basics? What is our superannuation for? What kind of approach should we be taking to our superannuation, regardless of COVID-19? What is it really for? What's the intention with our super?
Yeah, so super is really there to supplement what the rest of the public safety net for retirement income is there to do. So that's the age pension is the big one. It's basically supplement your savings into retirement and provide a retirement income for you because hopefully all one day we'll get to retire and we're going to need money to fund that retirement. And so the way super was set up was to incentivize savings by providing a really low tax environment, make it very simple and set and forget for most people. You don't necessarily have to make a whole bunch of choices around superannuation. The system is designed for the most part to put you into a fund that's going to be suitable for you and then give you returns across a lifetime, which will really compound your savings that you're making. That 9.5% currently that you're putting in from your salary and compounding that over a lifetime so you've got money to spend once it comes to retirement.
So why is COVID-19 such a curveball when it comes to superannuation then?
Yeah, so it is and it isn't. So superannuation is meant to be a really long-term saving. And we know throughout history that probably every decade or so, there's been a pretty significant hit on the markets. And that causes savings, which are inside superannuation that are invested in share markets to take a real hit as well. But we know over the longer term, a lot of this stuff tends to even out in the wash. And when we say longer term, we're talking about over someone's lifetime. So for a 30-year-old, for example, they're probably about 30 to 40 years away from considering retirement. So things like the current health pandemic will cause a big impact now, but they're not going to be accessing that money to far off in the future. So the market has plenty of time to recover. Now, that's a different case for people that are very close to retirement and obviously getting are far more anxious about what it will mean for them. And so for them, outside of what's going on currently, you really want to make sure that you've got a plan in place that tries to mitigate against these kind of losses. So generally, you're talking about going into lower risk investment options to make sure that if these once in a decade, or even with this one, it could be even, once in a 40-year crash in the market occurs, that you're in a good position to ride out some of that. And then over the longer term, you'll be able to pick up some of those losses, but you won't actually feel the loss as bad as the actual markets are, because you've got a diversified investment in your superannuation, which includes a range of things like shares, bonds. It might be invested in different cash and other liquid assets as well, which will really help to immunise you from some of the things that are going on in the share market at the moment.
And Daniel, you've been writing a number of great articles at choice.com.au. In fact, when this all started, we were looking at the early financial impacts. Things have obviously developed very quickly. Can you give us a sense of what you've been writing about for choice.com.au and what you're looking into at the moment?
Yeah, so one of the early things I wrote about is I had a chat with Scott Pape, the barefoot investor. And his guidance was basically that for a lot of Australians, for the majority of people who aren't approaching retirement, they don't actually need to tinker with their super. So as Xavier was saying, most people are in balanced accounts, and these are very much diversified accounts. So you do take a bit of a hit with the share market being down, but that is offset by the other more conservative assets that are in there. And the other important thing to come out of that article is the idea that time in the market beats timing the market. So what that essentially means is that it's very difficult to kind of jump in and out of the market and to pick the right time to re-enter to benefit from the recovery. So for a lot of people, the best approach is to simply stay in the market. And we know historically that approach does generate the best returns overall.
And you've also been looking into what the impact is on retirees, people who are retired right now. What are some of the impacts on them?
Yeah, I guess the general idea. So there's a thing called risk profile, which is generally not that well understood. But basically, the idea is for younger people that are quite a long way from retirement, they can take on a bit more risk. So they have more exposure to assets that are high risk and high return, like shares. But for people that are closer to retirement, it might make more sense for them to pursue a more conservative approach. So they'll have more exposure to assets like cash that are very much low risk and low return. So the younger people can ride out the ups and downs of the share market. People closer to retirement, they don't want to be exiting the market at when it's at its bottom. So in that case, it may be appropriate for them to build up a bit of a cash buffer. But that's definitely, that's an option more for people approaching retirement. But I might throw to Matthias on this point, and he can kind of talk through the investment strategies that might make a bit more sense for people that are approaching retirement.
Yes, Matthias, you're our numbers man at Choice and Super Consumers Australia. Can you take us through some of the numbers that are coming up and how you go about making that analysis?
Right, so we've published a guide on the impact of the 20k withdrawal that people might be thinking of making from their super now to deal with the fallout of the COVID crisis. So perhaps they've become unemployed or in housing stress. So we've tried to quantify the impact on your balance at retirement. To do that, we've presented the impact in terms of its value in today's dollars. So we'll probably link through to the article, but effectively if you're 30 years old now, the impact on your retirement balance is about $50,000 in today's money. And that impact lessens the closer you are to retirement, but essentially it's more than a one-to-one trade-off because of the compounding returns. So there is a significant cost to taking out that money now. So it's important to see it as a last resort because of the impact on your retirement.
So Xavier, we'll come back to you in terms of what are the practicalities when it comes to your pension at the end of the day, because we don't know what our lives are going to look like in 10, 20, 30 years time necessarily. What is that practical impact when that date hits?
Yeah, so not everyone might know this who's younger, but it's actually the majority of people will be drawing down a part pension that will help supplement their superannuation savings and savings that they might have outside of superannuation as well. So that's important to keep in mind, particularly with this impact of early withdrawal, because all it could mean for some people is that whatever they're drawing out will probably mean that they're more likely to be eligible for the age pension. So that may cover off some of the losses in their savings in superannuation. So it may kind of work out a little bit even for those people. There are some exceptions for people at the higher end of the market. Obviously, with more money, their impact will be won't be offset by the pension because they wouldn't be eligible for the pension anyway. It's important to know the pension is means tested, which means that if you have very high income or lots of assets, you'll either be eligible for less of it or you might not be eligible for it at all. So there is that offsetting going on there as well. And then for people on very low incomes, this may not make any impact either way. Like they may have been eligible for the full rate pension regardless of what they're withdrawing now, because their retirement savings will be not very high once they hit that stage anyway. So it is important to keep in mind that there are other public safety supports out there to look after people, and it's not all about your superannuation savings when it comes to what you'll be relying on in retirement.
Thank you for joining us for a Choice live stream. We're talking about superannuation and COVID-19. You can read all about this at choice.com.au. If you have any questions for Xavier, Daniel or Matthias, you can get in touch with us in the comments below at Choice Australia, Also on Twitter at Choice Australia and choice.community. Those are our community forums where we're there to help you out and our community is pitching in. Just a reminder that this live stream is general in nature and should not be treated as financial advice. You should seek help for your personal circumstances. And the National Debt Helpline is there for you, a non-profit way of getting help through these tough financial times. You can contact them on 1800 007 007 or ndh.org.au. Now, one of the things Super Consumers has had to look into over the last little while is people's choices when it comes to their superannuation, whether that be looking at ethical investing, whether that be they take up something that's a bit higher risk for a while. Those are quite hard choices to make. Xavier, I'm wondering if you can take us through what is the behaviour that you've seen when it comes to superannuation and COVID-19. Are people changing what they're doing at all?
Yeah, so it is a little bit early to tell. We're definitely hearing lots of anecdotal evidence, though, from the superannuation funds themselves to say that people are looking to move from their normal investment, which might be a kind of balanced or a higher risk option, into very low risk options like cash. And as Daniel was talking about before, there are real risks to this. You could be cashing out, say, at the bottom of the market, as we've seen, share markets crash, 30 to 40% over the last few months. And so we are hearing that some people are making that choice. And I just reiterate the points I made at the start of the segment. Like for younger people in particular, superannuation is this long-term investment. So making investment decisions on the kind of ups and downs of the market can really lead you into some pretty severe strife, because even the best financial advisors and stock pickers out there aren't very good at picking the peaks and the lows in the market. And if you don't get your timing exactly right, as Daniel was talking about before, you stand to lose a lot of money. So superannuation is really about riding out those peaks and those troughs and looking to the long term and what your actual retirement goals are.
If I can just jump in on this point, there was some really interesting analysis by First Links, the financial publisher. So they basically found if you were invested in the S&P, the US share market from 98 to I think 2018, if you invested the entire time, you got a return of 5.6%. If you were out of the market for just the 10 best days, you only got a return of 2%. So that really underlines the point that when the market does recover, it's often very unpredictable when that's going to occur. And it often happens in a really short time span. So that really kind of illustrates the point that time in the market beats timing the market, which is, as Xavier was saying, is extremely difficult to do even for experienced financial experts.
Matthias, I'm keen to know, you look at these numbers for a living. How do people go and make those decisions when, even for you, it's quite a lot of analysis to have to do day in, day out as part of your job? What would you say for people trying to make those decisions? What should they be thinking about?
Sure. So I just reiterate that for most people, because superannuation is a long-term investment, it's best to be in a diversified option. So the diversification somewhat limits the impact of share market declines, for example, and over the long term, having significant exposure to what we call growth assets, so shares as being the key part of that, has in recent history been a good financial decision. There are some exceptions. If you're very close to retirement and you intend to withdraw a lump sum, it's reasonable, given the state of the crisis right now, that you may consider moving to a lower risk option that is safer for you, and you're potentially less likely to lose more money, and thus you'll be able to meet your goal in terms of the amount of super that you have at retirement when you pull out your balance. But for most people, that isn't the case. I'd also note that most people in retirement are not taking out a lump sum. They're drawing an account-based pension. So that means their money is still invested in superannuation, and it's usually in one of these diversified options. So it's not as though retirement is the end. You're still going to be investing for retirement. So if you see it that way, you can still take more of a long-term approach rather than potentially worrying that your investment's going to be wiped out because of the current declines. As Dan said, having time in the market and being in the market for the recovery is likely to make a big difference to your long-term return. So those are the key things I'd note.
And one thing for people who are in the system right now is insurance in superannuation. And we've seen some interesting behaviour from the super funds and their insurers during the COVID-19 situation. Xavier, can you take us through what we've noticed? And thankfully, Choice and Super Consumers Australia have had some good wins. Can you explain to us what's happened there?
Yeah, so we did early on. We identified through our work and a lot of the work that Matthias does that there were a number of funds that had pandemic exclusions in their insurance policies in super. There's about 8 funds actually. And one of those had already activated its pandemic exclusion. So for some new members that had joined the fund by choice, they were excluded for, say, the first 30 days of the policy from being able to claim for a pandemic related illness. But we pushed a number of the other funds, there were 7 other funds, to say, look, we don't think at this time this is the right kind of policy that they should be pursuing and relying upon. It's really going to harm people, particularly frontline workers who may have entered the workforce recently and fallen into the bucket of people who would have been affected by these pandemic exclusions. So we called on all the superannuation funds to make a commitment that they would not be relying on those pandemic exclusions. And within the space of a few days, I'm happy to say that all the funds walked away from relying on those terms, which means those people will continue to be covered, which is very good. It provides a lot of comfort, I think, to people who, particularly frontline workers who may have been just entering the workforce for the first time in order to take on nursing roles or teaching roles to kind of pick up some of the slack that was being caused by this massive disruption. They weren't going to be negatively impacted. So that was really good by the superannuation funds and the insurers that took that quick action to make sure people continue to be protected.
And the government's made some changes to drawdown rates. Can you explain to us what drawdown rates are and what the changes are?
Yeah, so as Matthias mentioned before, most people in retirement take a pension approach to drawing down their superannuation savings. And what the government's essentially done, this is something they did in the global financial crisis, is reduce those minimum drawdown rates. And I'll throw to Matthias to give you a bit more of a description of why they did that.
Yeah, so the principal reason was to give retirees more flexibility in how much they take out of their account-based pension each year by halving the drawdown rate. So one thing to note is the drawdown rate, the minimum drawdown rate that's legislated is what you're required to draw down from your pension each year. And that's been halved. Now it increases with age. So as you get older, the drawdown rate that you're required to take out, the amount that you're required to take out increases. So the reason for doing that is because with the recent sharp decline in the stock market, there's been a significant impact on those account-based pension balances. So what the government is doing is allowing retirees flexibility as to whether or not they want to withdraw as much from that account at a point where there's been a significant hit on their balance. So they can trade off potentially having a bit lower consumption now and then retaining more in their account so that there's more to take advantage of the future rise in market value that will likely happen once this crisis is over. So it's a trade-off of lower current consumption for potentially substantially higher consumption over the whole of retirement, because you'll be able to take better advantage of the rise in share prices once the crisis is over. That's the basic logic.
Thank you for joining us for this Choice live stream in conjunction with Super Consumers Australia. You can get in touch with us. There's lots of great information at choice.com.au. If you head to our website, we've got lots of great articles from Daniel, who is joining us here, drawing on work from Matthias and Xavier. If you have any questions for us, please do leave a comment below. You can also tweet us at Choice Australia, and our Choice community forums are a great way to get help and also help others in the community with these issues. We've been relying on a lot of tip-offs from the community through those Choice community forums as well. Just a reminder for this live stream, it is general in nature and should not be treated as financial advice. You should seek help for your personal circumstances. You can contact the National Debt Helpline and speak to a financial counsellor if you need some help. Let's do a bit of a recap. Superannuation and COVID-19 has been one of the hot topics ever since the government announced changes to access for superannuation for people struggling through the financial impacts of COVID-19. And let's recap the basics. Xavier, what has the government made available to people and how does it work?
Yeah, so basically they've made available people's superannuation savings up to $20,000, $10,000 this financial year and $10,000 next financial year. And so people can access that tax-free, which is nice. Also, for some people who, that money is going to be far more valuable to them now than in retirement, that's going to be a very important support. But it is important to weigh that against some of the downsides of accessing super now. You'll miss out basically on a lifetime of compound interest on that money, which can be quite significant. And you'll also likely see you cashing out pretty much at the bottom of the market or after the market's taken a pretty significant hit. So you're not getting good value for money on your superannuation savings if you are cashing out right now. In terms of the impact on retirement balances, as Matthias took us through earlier, for a 30-year-old, that could mean something like $50,000 in retirement. To put that in context as well, that's about or slightly less than what your average couple would be able to live off in retirement for about a year. So it is quite a significant amount of money. And people considering it may have to weigh up, well, this might actually mean that I have to work for longer and can't retire when I plan to. So they're all important things to weigh before moving straight to withdrawing that $20,000 that's available. And you may also miss out on some of the recovery. We've seen over the long term that investments in superannuation can be quite profitable. There are troughs and peaks in the market, but riding them out generally can lead to better outcomes for you across a lifetime. And so there is real value in staying within the market. And insurance premiums is actually one that we haven't gotten to, and I might spend a little bit more time on now, because withdrawing your superannuation savings may actually impact the insurance that you have in your super as well. A lot of people don't realise, about a quarter of people, I think last time some surveys were done, that they actually have insurance in their superannuation. And the reason for this is people get defaulted into it if they're not making any kind of active decisions. And that insurance covers things like if you pass away, if you're totally and permanently disabled, or if you're unable to work due to some disability, there are income protection payments that are available there as well. Now, these things aren't free. You still have to pay premiums for them, but you pay them out of your superannuation. So, of course, if you are withdrawing some super early, that may impact your ability to continue to pay those premiums. And we really encourage you to contact your fund to find out what the impact might be on you, because they actually all have different policies around how much money you can have in your account before your insurance is impacted. And they can also let you know important things. It's a good time to check in actually on your insurance and what value it's offering. So it's a good time to find out, well, how much does it cost? What's it covering me for? If you are having reduced hours or you become unemployed due to what's going on at the moment, that can also impact your eligibility to claim on insurance. So these are all important questions that you should take to your superannuation fund, because they all work slightly differently in the way they offer their insurance cover. And you don't want to be caught out and left without insurance cover that could be very important to you right now. So it's important to weigh up its value, how much it costs, and what benefit it's going to deliver. And one other thing we probably haven't talked too much about as well is the impact of, we've seen a few unsavory characters sniffing around superannuation at the moment, unfortunately. We're talking about scammers. And we've heard a few reports come through to us of people just making unsolicited calls, asking people if they know that they can now access their superannuation early, and then offering to help out for a fee. We'd advise people to stay well clear of this bunch. Already we've seen the regulators take some action against them. And yeah, anyone trying to get you to pay in order to access your super probably doesn't have your best interest at heart. It's a free service that the government's making available. And the way to go about it, if you do choose to go down this path, is to register your interest by the MyGov website. And the ATO has information about how you can go about doing that as well.
We've got some questions in from the choice community. One person is asking, why isn't it a good strategy to adopt a more conservative investment strategy and then switch back when the market is about to go up again, especially if you're a person that maybe does monitor the market closely? Why isn't that such a good idea?
So what you're essentially talking about here is an idea called timing the market. So in theory, you could jump out of the market when it's at the bottom and jump back in just as it's about to surge. But in reality, it's extremely difficult to do this. Even if you're an experienced, if you're experienced in investments, if you're a financial expert, it's extremely difficult to do that, to get that right. So what we do know is historically, simply staying in the market over the long term, that has yielded better returns than trying to time the market.
Let's have a look at another question from the choice community. Once the pandemic is over, how long would it take for the market to rebound and for super funds to go back to normal? That's a bit of a crystal ball question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And anyone that tells you the answer to that with any surety is probably lying to you. So you need to be careful about that. And it goes back to Daniel's point before, like anyone that thinks they can predict the highs and lows here don't know what they're talking about. So it is a long-term investment. But all of that said, we can see over the history of time that markets do tend to recover. And so this event probably isn't undermining some of the fundamentals of the market. It's taking a hit right now, but because it isn't undermining those fundamentals, there are still companies that are very profitable and their core business is largely unaffected by what's going on right now. They'll continue to trade in the market and continue to provide good value to people who have their investments with them. So again, think long term, think about what the fundamentals of the market are, and your superannuation isn't something you should be looking to shift with every up and down that's going on.
Matthias, I'm keen to find out, what are you looking for in the numbers to see some positive signs again? What is it that you expect to see?
Well, there is a historical relationship between economic growth globally and also in Australia and equity markets, so share markets. So one of the reasons that a lot of the predictions of returns on superannuation that's partly invested in equity markets are lower into the future is because of a global slowdown in growth and also low interest rates, which have an effect on fixed income assets like bonds. So in terms of COVID-19, once there's a vaccine and once the economy starts to grow again because of businesses people being able to return to work and non-essential businesses being able to start up again, that is probably a point at which you would see the stock market start to pick up again. But having said that, timing that as to when that will happen is probably not a wise thing. You're better off to hold steady in most cases with your, if you believe you're in a decent diversified investment option, it's probably it may be in your best interest to stay there rather than to try and time the market for the reasons that Dan and Xavier have put forward.
It's probably also worth mentioning, Matthias kind of touched on this, most people are in balanced super accounts. So they'll have quite a diversified portfolio. So they might have around 50 or 60% of their super invested in shares. So they'll also generally be invested in things like cash, in things like property, infrastructure, unlisted assets. And some of these other classes haven't been as badly affected as shares. So that is kind of offsetting some of the decline in the share market as well.
We have heard about scams, as you mentioned before, Xavier, in this space, some really unfortunate behaviour out there in the community. But one question that's come through is, I've heard of real estate agents advising people to withdraw their super early to pay rent. Is this okay? There is some talk, particularly from the financial regulator, that this might actually be against financial advice laws. What's the update on that, and what have you heard about the advice from real estate agents?
Yeah, look, we have been seeing this, unfortunately. Quite a few consumers have contacted us saying, hey, my real estate agent is saying I should be dipping into my super if I'm struggling to pay the rent at the moment. Real estate agents are not financial advisors, and in order to give that kind of advice, you do have to be a financial advisor. And so we'd really be encouraging people to report that kind of behaviour if they see it, because it's completely unacceptable. The regulator has already come out last week to say this is not on either. And there's quite serious fines and even criminal penalties associated with people giving financial advice who are not licensed to. So that's really a warning to anyone that's seeking to give out financial advice at this moment that, you know, could really harm people and not be in people's best interests, to watch out, because the regulators are paying attention.
And we should say at this point, this live stream is only general and shouldn't be treated as financial advice, but we'll make a particular mention of financial counsellors across the country. They are outstanding non-profit workers and professionals who will help you through those tricky issues with debt and when you're dealing with difficult financial circumstances. You can contact the National Debt Helpline on 1800 007 007, or you can contact ndh.org.au. That's the website for the National Debt Helpline. We can highly recommend non-profit options when it comes to getting help with financial troubles. I'm Jonathan Brown from Choice, joined by the team from Super Consumers Australia, who have been collaborating with us the last little while on getting information out to you. We would really love your tips. If you hear anything from your super fund, or if you hear about one of these scams, people trying to tell you what to do with your super, and it sounds fishy, you can get in touch with us. News tips at choice.com.au, but also on the choice.community forums. You can also join our campaigns, campaigns.choice.com.au, particularly when it comes to superannuation and insurance clauses. We've had some early wins. But also, if you have the means at the moment, and obviously we don't expect it from anyone who is struggling financially at the moment, but if you do have the means, Choice is a non-profit organisation and we'd love your support as a Choice member or to donate to our cause, because we are here to help you in the community. Now, just to finish up, I'm keen to find out from you, Daniel, what can people already read that you've provided on choice.com.au? You've got some great articles, but also what's coming up? What can we expect to read about?
Yeah, we've got a couple of articles specifically about what people can be doing with their super in light of COVID. So we've got one around just what people can do generally. And as I was saying before, the good news for a lot of people is that you don't actually have to tinker with your super. So we talked to Scott Pape, the Barefoot Investor, for that one. There's another article that's more specifically targeted at people that are approaching retirement and giving them some advice about what they should be doing with super. And the most recent one is just a kind of overview of early access to super. So what you should be weighing up before you go down that path, scams to look out for. Kind of goes into a little bit about the issue of people maybe coercing you to access your super early, and it gives some resources for people that are in that situation. And it also touches on insurance and how making an early withdrawal will impact on your super. So probably the next one that we're going to publish is about hours restrictions and the insurance in your super. So as Xavier was touching on earlier, for a lot of people, when they're out of work or they're working less hours, the insurance in their super is actually less valuable. So the next article is kind of going to delve into that issue.
Thank you so much for joining us for this live stream. Xavier, Daniel and Matthias from Super Consumers Australia. You can read more of their work at choice.com.au. Just another last reminder that this live stream is general in nature and shouldn't be treated as financial advice. You should seek help for your personal circumstances, and you can contact the National Debt Helpline. If you have more questions for our team, you can leave them in the comments below on Twitter at Choice Australia and in the Choice community forums. And there is plenty to read at choice.com.au relating to COVID-19 and your consumer rights. I'm Jonathan Brown. Thank you so much for joining us for this live stream. If you'd like to hear from any other Choice experts and join in on these live streams, please do let us know in the comments or on our other social media. Thank you so much to my producer Jim Hook and the team at Choice producing this all from our homes. Just like anyone else, we are adapting to the COVID-19 situation. And I want to say a particular thank you to Choice members, Choice campaign supporters, and our entire Choice community, including those community forums that are helping us with essential tip-offs along the way. The COVID-19 situation is impacting so many different parts of the community in many different ways, and Choice, as Australia's non-profit consumer advocate, is here to help. I'm Jonathan Brown. Thank you so much. Another thank you to my producer, Jim Hook, and we'll see you for the next live stream. You can read more at choice.com.au.